Gotcha. Okay, I'll put that one on. So got him. There we go. Mhm.
There we go. All right. Good evening and welcome to Showtime TV Productions. I'm your host, Omar Rashada. Today's topic of discussion is African American men / mental health substance abuse. And I have so far two awesome guests. I have Apostle Ivory Hopkins, who's a counselor, a mentor, apostle, and I don't know, he got about 1,000 trades. And then I got Jason Coleman, who also got 1,000 trades. He's a educator from the Mental Health Association of Delaware. Gentlemen, good evening.
Good
Good evening.
evening.
Good
All right,
evening.
let's start off with Jason. If you could just introduce yourself to the audience, talk about what you do with the Mental Health Association of Delaware.
Sure. So I work for the Mental Health Association in Delaware, as you said, as a community educator. My work is pretty much exactly that. We go out into the community, we connect with people all throughout the state. We're talking to folks about mental health, mental wellness. We're talking about resources. We do a lot of trainings in the community. And again, some of this I'm talking pre-COVID-19. Obviously, there's many adjustments that have happened,
Definitely.
but we're still doing the same kind of outreach. We do a lot of suicide prevention and intervention trainings, mental health first aid, these kinds of things that we do with people throughout the state. And we act as kind of a resource hub. So when people are trying to find out about what is available, what they might need, what can they direct a family member or loved one towards, then we really work closely with people to try to make sure that they find what they're looking for.
Okay, Apostle.
Well, I am founder of Pilgrim's Ministry of Deliverance. I'm also a national teacher and chancellor of RDU, Rapid Deliverance University, out of the Redland, California area. And I am the East Coast chancellor. I'm also a counselor in areas of working with substance abuse and other areas of both basic mental health from a biblical and spiritual side. Keeping the faith, but yet tapping into the other vehicles in the community. Matter of fact, one of the things I would say in the area here in Georgetown, we have Reverend Tony Neal from Georgetown here. The name of his ministry is Everlasting Hope Ministries, and they do an anti-drug and alcohol rally every August. And they work along with those that are coming out of drug addiction and also out of the prison area. And so we also work along with that ministry here in Georgetown, Delaware, and what have we honor what Reverend Tony Neal is doing. But my side of the help here is from a counselor's point of view, and I was a former drug addict myself. So having gone through that experience, and I believe in all of the vehicles that we have in order to get the person to become a whole man. And most of all, we believe that and our faith in Christ, that is our hope and strength to help us through these things.
I want to start off by asking. I remember when I was in the field, when I guess when I was in the field, I had people who told me that in the African American community, it was mental health was a taboo. You really didn't seek help. You didn't really seek treatment. Um, this African American community pretty much just learned to handle their problems on their own. Somebody want to ask any of you two gentlemen, is that something that you're aware of? You know, you would be really respected counselors and professionals in the field. Was it like that in the past that you guys heard about? And then how do you think it is today? So any one of you can start off.
Lonnie, would you like to start, my friend?
Well, I'll take a stab at that first.
Yeah.
So I think that in general there has been a resistance for all populations towards really seeking out mental health. And I think that when we look at a lot of the stigma and cultural attitudes that we have around mental health, it shouldn't be surprising that that's the case. And so I think when you start to now then look at other communities, smaller populations of people in the United States, and you look at the African American community, and you look at other communities based on racial demographics, you're going to see the exact same thing. And you're going to see, but I think what you're going to see is you're going to see that magnified because now you have folks in the Black community where the same resources may not have historically been available, the same access to the education and awareness around this. And when you have a community that typically is a little bit more vulnerable anyways, or a lot more vulnerable anyways, in a society, and then when seeking mental health is, one of the things that kind of opens you up to being even more vulnerable, right? So what you're doing is you're saying, well, here's all these other external stressors and factors and lack of resources, lack of specific education towards this. And so what I think happens is you find that that's magnified when you then come into the African American community, for sure.
And I totally agree with Jason, his assessment of what he's saying. Just about a couple of weeks ago, I'll never forget this. It was on a Saturday. I was counseling an individual. She was a young lady of faith. But as I talked to her, I began to realize that I had to navigate past her belief that her faith would make her void of needing any mental health. Going for any type of counseling, looking at any chemical or emotional imbalances. And she was completely surprised when I told her that the issue you're dealing with is not there because of a lack of faith, but it is a chemical imbalance that was pertinent to the condition of her family. Her family line had mental health issues. In the Black community, in the African American community, we tend to go hush hush with these things because it does have a stigmatism to it. And so therefore, when I eased her through it all, I was telling her, look, I am a man of faith, and surely having a mental issue, whether it's bipolar, drug addiction, or some type of chemical imbalance in the brain, that is not a sign of a lack of faith or strength in God. That's just a physical issue that needs to be dealt with. Even Jesus said, he that is whole hath no need of a physician. So I think in every community, this subject is about the same.
Yeah.
The culture, the ideology of their belief and superstition causes them to not believe that they need to go get the mental health assistance that they need. But I'm here tonight with you guys, encouraging people that dealing with mental health issues, even addictions that run through family lines, that run through your life, is not something to be embarrassed of. It's something that must be approached in a positive manner and get balanced help rather than push off that help and the condition become worse.
I just want to tell you, I'm so happy to hear you say that, because when, if I happen to be kind of talking to a group of folks we've had a lot of churches have outreach to us to try to educate some of the key or core members there around mental health, so they can better help the people that are, that are in their church community. And one of the things that I always share is, and I always knock on wood, I use a superstition. I kind of say, if the church was on fire, we would pray, but we would also call the fire department. Right?
Hello.
So you can take these, having a sense of what mental health treatment looks like, and having a sense of what it can do for an individual. These aren't, and also having faith, those aren't mutually exclusive things. And so it really makes me feel great to hear you say that was the approach you took with that.
Omar, I have a deep passion because I have seen the denial of the actual need of mental health assistance in the
Mhm.
church, even with leaders that I have dealt with.
Mhm.
I actually now would like to incorporate in our seminary, in our school, that the ministers that are in training before they graduate and get their degrees to actually have to go to a mental health facility, set in. I don't care even if they go to an AA or an NA,
Right.
set in on a few of the meetings and get a clue of what you're dealing with when you're hearing the hearts of men and women who are struggling with addictions or who are struggling with mental health issues, so that when you engage them, you will have a working knowledge rather than spout off things that drives them away. And we're calling it faith, but in reality it's foolishness and presumption. And I would love to have that incorporated, and I think that's what I'm going to do, because with the school that I'm with, I have the power of influence to try to add that, even with the ministries that are connected to me. I'll tell you this, Jason, you will be utterly happy and surprised at how many ministries that are connected with me, wherein I have been able to tell them about getting the mental health getting the mental health that they need, going when you're dealing with drugs and narcotics or alcoholism, getting those places such as NA or Alcoholic Anonymous or any type of mental health association. They're not our enemies, but they are partners with us trying to get the person to become the whole man.
Absolutely.
You, you know, um, before we become men, we're teenagers and we're boys. And I remember growing up, and then this may be in just about every generation. If you look at the school system, many of the majority of the students who were in special education were primarily African American males. Majority of them who were suspended were African American males. And today, even back then, some of them are classified as ADHD, apostrophe. um, Man, are the young boys being mistreated? Are they being misdiagnosed? Or are they being misunderstood? Talk to
That's
me.
a broad statement that's hard to ask with a one liner,
Okay.
because in answering that with a one liner saying, well, many of them are being misdiagnosed, that wouldn't be true to the examination of the issue at hand, because
Okay.
there are young people that do validly have attention deficit disorders, that do validly have mental and emotional issues that stem from a number of reasons. um, in my counseling that I do, I have often had parents that would call me, and I would actually help them process into the direction of for going to have an evaluation to identify some of the issues that they're dealing with. And that's how come when I say I can't answer that with a broad blanket statement and
Mhm.
what have you, because it would be very disingenuous to professionals who actually know what they're doing and can tell the signs. What I fear more than anything, Jason and my nephew, is I fear a young child needing mental health, needing to be processed for the issues of mental health that they're dealing with, and it not getting dealt with. I worry more about that than it being misinterpreted, because I think we can catch things actually trying to deal with it quicker than just leaving it to itself. So it's hard for me to say that a blanket statement that they
Right.
are being misdirected in the wrong direction.
Right.
I won't make a blanket statement either, although I will say my background prior to working with the Mental Health Association was as a middle school guidance counselor.
Mhm.
And so I can tell you that there certainly are efforts to try to make sure that particularly young African American male students, are not being suspended at higher rates. That tends to be the case. There are many different kinds of studies and information that actually kind of refer to the school to prison pipeline,
Mhm.
which is, that they found that the connection between students heavily being suspended from schools directly led towards more contact with law, more contact with juvenile justice and these sorts of things. So I couldn't. I mean, really, I think it's hard to. I mean, you can look at different kinds of statistics, and you can say that I would agree that there's a need to look at what students need, what's the reality of their situation. I don't think specifically, diagnosing a student is going to make that student more vulnerable, but it can, because of, again, some of the stigma, some of the attitudes, some of the practices that might be happening in different institutions. So I think that there's, I think that there's definitely a need to look at how and why any child is being diagnosed. And then more importantly, well, what are you going to do with the diagnosis? Because the diagnosis doesn't tell you anything other than give you a fair starting point to what some of the needs of that individual might be. But certainly I know that there are efforts to try to address this in many schools, because historically it has been a problem that that students of color are suspended and given referrals in disproportionate amounts, to other populations. That is true.
Right. Apostle, you said something that's very interesting in terms of the child needing help, that may not be getting any help. Which the first thing that drew my mind is some people may be going through some symptoms or some issues and may not know that it needs to be addressed. So I want to ask the both of you, if you care to answer, maybe what are some of the warning signs that may indicate that someone may be going through some mental health issues? I know, depression, stress. If you guys have anything to add, because I don't want to assume that people watching know that they need help, but they,
Right.
what I mean? Yeah.
Most time, well, let me just say this: a lot of time, I won't say most or all, but it is a common factor that that for many people, they don't have the self-awareness that something is actually going on with them. Many times people get help, they get connected with mental health services, they get connected with treatment services because people around them, family, friends, loved ones, neighbors, have kind of engaged them and said, hey, I see this, I feel this when I'm around you, I heard you say, and it makes me concerned, and I'm just wondering what's happening. How can we support you? And tends to be the people that do a better job of that kind of interaction usually get a little bit better result with connecting that person with.
Jason said a powerful mouthful there, because in my counseling, I often find that those that are close and around begin to recognize a change in the behavior. I'll give you a good case in point. Some time ago, I was doing a counseling for that it was a number of sessions, and we began to notice that the parent was saying that the child's grades had changed, even their child's appetite and being involved with others. The child became withdrawn, and the key point that called us was, now hear what I'm saying. The child, when the parents went through a divorce, the divorce was so hot and heavy, where the parents were going at each other. The child literally thought that the child itself was the cause of it. Had they not been born, had they not been there, the parents would have never went through the divorce. Now, it's amazing how the mind of a child thinks, how it would take and interpret two adults having issues in a relationship. And that's real, and it happens. And our conversation here is not to put down couples who are going through issues of divorce or separation. But in that particular counseling that I was doing, the child's grades were affected, the child's involvement was affected, and we had to end up having to have that child work with in order to process that the divorce and the separation was not their fault. The parents were not going through this because of them. It was so that rejection wouldn't set in, low self-esteem would not manifest in the fullness, and feeling like they were the problem. Because if that was not addressed and it went under the radar, that child's grades would have been messed up. You can come from just about A student right down to C and D and simply be under the radar, not recognizing the root cause of the change that you're seeing. And good, proper counseling, that's what it's looking for, not the root blame, but the root cause. And there's a great difference in the root blaming someone than it is finding the root cause. The two parents were glad to have found out that the effects of their divorce was having. So they began to work with the child together. More than fight them each other, they worked with the child together to help their child process what was going on. This is just how powerful catching emotional and mental health issues at the early stage can be, because that rejection can turn into addiction, acting out sexually. It can turn into a number of negative emotional responses that was rooted on the rejection and pain from the separation and divorce. That was just one case that I dealt with.
That's a great example, and I think and there's some of what you're speaking about that is these big changes, these big shifts, and these shifts can be positive things that you might think are positive, like all of a sudden this shy person is outgoing and they're doing all kinds of wild things and they're the life of the party. But that might, so every time the ways that people act out or react or express these things can be very individual, and oftentimes it kind of does fall to that person or those people that really kind of know that individual to really understand what those changes are. There are people that, for anybody watching this, there are people that that they could walk into the room and not say a word, and you would know that something was going on with that person. Now the difference is, do we feel comfortable enough, and do we feel like we have kind of a basic foundation of tools to engage that person and to know where to direct them to, not to answer or solve their problems, but do we know how to listen, and do we know how to direct that person towards the appropriate kinds of resources? Because oftentimes one of the things that that holds people back from our experience in talking to people in the community is people usually start a session and they say, the reason why I don't ask people is because I don't know what to say. And that tells you exactly what they're thinking they need to do. That they need to say something. You don't. You need to be a good listener. You need to understand how to ask questions. You need to understand how to be quiet and allow that person an opportunity to express what it is that's going on. And then at the appropriate time to know, well, what's available? What could we who else might know a little more about this that we could kind of connect with and talk to.
See, Omar, what I love about what Jason just said, they're not asking you. There's a way that you approach wisely situations dealing with people's lives, and they're not looking for you to solve their problem. They're looking for you to hear it. Okay. They want to know whether you hear it. I share this, guys, because I think it's a good opportunity to share that we have been shoved into a new dimension of counseling. Now, it's been there as far as the cyber counseling, the internet process that we're dealing with now because of COVID. And I'm finding a strange characteristic in some of the younger people that I counsel and minister to. They actually say, is what we're talking about, will it become a post? Will it become something on the internet? People's emotional pain is the last place in the universe for it to be put out on, is on a post. In other words, you're not going to take the pain that they're dealing with while you're trying to help them and put it out on a blog. We do live in a society that we blog just about everything, but the trust and the processing of real good help and counseling in this cyber age is listening, is privacy, is directing people in the right directions when you find that when you begin to, they start addressing things in their lives, being able to direct them to correct information. But the cyber world, you have to be very careful of. I just shared that because that's the world we live in right now. And we're going to see, Jason, I actually believe we're going to see a great deal more of cyber counseling in the age that we're living in. And I think it's going to have to be revamped and the rules of engagement really looked at.
Yeah, I think that we've seen a lot of this. We have a different kind of engagement that now that a lot of our wellness groups have been being conducted online, because we offer free community support and wellness groups for people to join.
Right.
And it's very interesting. I think sometimes you wonder, well, how am I supposed to get that personal connection with, but people are finding it. And I think also there are other things that, so there's the positive side, and there's the downside to everything. But some of the positives through using a lot of these Zoom sessions for counseling and other kinds of things is now some of the concerns, some of the transportation issues and concerns that people have, the fear of going someplace new, needing to find a babysitter, or they can't go to therapy. These kinds of things have, taken away some different barriers that were there for people to engage in treatment and to engage in the support that they need.
Yeah.
Right. And then here's another issue. I was doing one of my shows, I think it was the last week or the week before, a conversation with African American men, a conversation with men of color. And one of the issues that was brought up is two of the gentlemen, and actually all three of the gentlemen on the panel stated this, that we as men, we're told to hold our feelings in. We're told to not express ourselves. We're told to be strong, man, just take it in. Don't cry, be a man. And Apostle, man, if you hold those feelings in for too long, someone push that button, man, you can explode, man. So if you gentlemen can speak for a moment on the significance of men being able to express themselves, not to hold their feelings in, let people know what's going on. Don't hold it in because it's going to hurt.
Would you like to go first? Because I am a public speaker, Jason, I want to give you first shot because
I am as well. So we're in the same boat. But
yeah, we're trying to find a polite way to say, go ahead, brother.
We're doing a great job of just giving each other the floor. So go ahead, please.
All right. That could be none truer than what you just said. When you have a lot of emotional things that you're going through and a man holds it internally on the inside, it really shows up somewhere. There's a biblical verse. I was talked about it last night in a class I did, and it was in the book of Luke. It said, there is nothing hid that shall not be made manifest, and nothing done in darkness that shall not be brought out in the light. Hidden emotions of pain, of frustration, they will show themselves. They will. A first mechanism that one will go through is the mechanism of denial. We guys suck it up. Men don't cry. Men don't feel. I got this. And that is a lie in some cases to our emotions. There are times wherein we take the mechanism of denial, saying that I'm good, I'm okay. But that left to itself, eventually what is hidden on the inside will show up. And here goes the amazing thing, guys. It will show up either or in the emotion as anger, frustration, venting, and actually exploding. Or it will show up in the other departments of the body, the emotions. It will show up in the physical body, causing sicknesses that will show up in the body. Many men have actually held things on the inside and have caused even sickness to operate in their body and what have you. What we're sitting on here talking about right now is not, it's weak to just sit right down and cry, man up, suck it up, dude. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about it is okay for men to process their pain so they can get a hold of the right grace, power, and answer to deal with it. Because if it is kept to oneself, it will show up. It'll show up in frustrations in the family, frustrations with the children, the wife, job. So I believe in that we really need to address emotional pains on the inside. I thank God that I was kind of born at a time on the other side where men were told, the old school that was raising me, bro, they were telling me, look, hey, men don't cry. You just wear your stuff. You don't wear your heart on your sleeve. Come on, man up. And all of those terms, I understood what they were trying to say.
Mhm.
But in the area of my health and my emotions, it did not work like that. Can I share this? And I'm going to get out of the way.
Mhm.
Talking about pain inside of men. Now, some of my family that's listening didn't know I had this experience. Now, watch this, Jason, bro. Here I am, a pastor. I've done hundreds of funerals, right? Well, I went through a summer where I went to a stage where I lost two brothers and a brother-in-law, right? Now I'm like, I'm a counselor, I'm a go-getter. I mean, straight up, I'm a soldier, right?
Mhm.
One of the pastors in my church, her husband died, and I was supposed to do his funeral that Saturday. Now, I had never slowed down to deal with the grief and the pain of the death of two brothers and a brother-in-law. So I'm getting ready the Saturday of the funeral, Brother Jason. I'm getting ready the Saturday of the funeral. I'm the man. I got this. I was going to go knock that funeral out, booyah, and then come on back in. I'm the preacher. I'm the apostle. Listen what happened. My body, I was getting dressed to take and get ready to go do that funeral, and my hands and everything just started shaking. And my heart went into a palpitation. Now, when I tell my wife, take me to the emergency room, take me to the emergency room.
Mhm.
When we got there, my hands were shaking, and the doctor said to me, he said, sir, we'll check you out. He said, have you had any specific trauma? I said, well, I said, well, yeah. I said, I've gone through a few things. I said, but I've got a funeral to do. And my body was just like this. Hands were started shaking. What had happened was the undealt with grief and pain of all of those losses, almost back to back, had an emotional effect on me. And me getting ready to go do the funeral triggered off. Now, I'm going to tell you about the emotions and pain, guys. If you don't slow down for it, it will slow you down for it. Are you
Wow.
hearing me? And I actually went through the process of healing, dealing with the grief and pain. Needless to say, I never did that funeral. And the feeling of guilt. This is the thing too. It's the feeling of guilt in me because I wasn't able to man up and go do that funeral. That was tremendous. But I needed to have slowed down and processed my pain. And not, as we that what that saying go, Jason, not be strong for everybody, but actually let the process of the grief and the weeping and the pain of the loss manifest itself to the fullness.
So much of what you talked about, I hear from different folks. There's a lot of people that go to the emergency room because they do think that they're having a heart attack and they're having panic and anxiety attacks and things like this that are happening. I think you mentioned that you talking about that story really brings something very important. I wasn't even actually really thinking about talking about it tonight, but even though we are talking about mental health, there is a physical side to it all. There is a
Mhm.
physical connection. Something that I often will remind people that have kids or have young people in their lives is, um, when I was a counselor, I spent a lot of time in the nurse's office because yeah, there's kids that want to go to the nurse's office because they don't want to take a test or a quiz, right? But when you see kids that are in the nurse's office a lot, sometimes they don't have they don't have the expressive ability to talk about that pain, to talk about that stress that they're feeling, and you start to learn and you start to understand why this child who is dealing with certain things at home is in the nurse's office every Friday at 1 o'clock because now they have 2 straight days of that to look forward to, and school lets out at 2. And so things come out, things can show themselves, and I think you're 100% right. It's going to come out one way or another. And it takes a lot of strength to deal with the things that make us feel the most vulnerable. There is a lot of strength that has to happen. And I think we also have to kind of look at, you know, the way that we think about, you know, mental health and being well, because a lot of times we think about these sorts of things. We tell people that we want them to talk about their emotions, but then when they start to talk about them, what happens? How are they treated? What are the looks that we give them? You know, by the time you're an adult, you know, you're taught all these different things about what being a male or what being an adult is. And certainly young boys, I think, what is it, after somewhere after like the age of 6, it's like anytime, you know, as the older boys get, it's like it suddenly becomes this otherworldly thing for them to cry in front of other people. And you know, and I think that sometimes we protect ourselves, and there's a necessity in some aspects to do that, right? We can't show and tell all of these things to everybody, because everybody's not going to do the right thing with our personal information. But I think we do have to try to encourage and teach people that the right individuals are going to support what you feel, and they're going to try to help you to get to a place where you're feeling better and where you're feeling like you can do the things that you want to do and the things that you need to do. And there certainly isn't any shame in it. You know, there's no shame in some. I mean, we see our favorite sports heroes cry after a game, right? And have that emotional release for something. Now, meanwhile, I'm sitting here looking at somebody who's on TV crying, and I'm saying they still made millions of dollars, I'd be cheering. but there's another real piece to the disappointment, to what that person is feeling emotionally, and it's real. And I think that there's just a need for us to really try to kind of strip some of that back. These pressures that we keep on putting on people to be a way that might make us feel more comfortable, and to encourage people to just be authentic, and that if you're feeling something, you're feeling it for a reason. If you're experiencing something, you're experiencing it for a reason. Now let's make sure that whatever that reasoning is, whatever that core thing is, that it's not taking your life off track of where you want it to be and where you need it to be. And I think when we step back and if we were to look at it in that fashion, then we would start to just see that these are things that people are experiencing, you know, and that we're not immune from experiencing those same things. You know, we're all on the same boat when it comes to that journey of what we experience in life. And most of the things that are going to happen to us, we're not going to be in control of. So the best thing we can do is try to figure out, well, how can I still try to steer this boat and steer this ship of life that I'm on in the healthiest way, without it manifesting itself in, you know, substance use and abuse, without it manifesting itself into me re-traumatizing myself or other people that are around me, because there are things that are going on. There are things that have happened with me that I have been unable to or unwilling to address because of these pressures that our society is putting on people.
See, the amazing thing about this conversation tonight, Omar, is that the cultural mindset runs so deep that we have seen in the African American community the need of just getting a prostate check to find out whether you have cancer, whether you have polyps, whether you have a condition. The stigma of just getting that type of help has caused some of our lives to be even lost, or cancer to be even advanced. the stigma of not getting pre-tested runs under that same ideology. Even when you look at drug addiction, watching our life spin into a spiral where we've gotten caught up in a thing that we can't say, look, I'm hurting, I'm using a substance to mask the pain. And the next thing you know, you're watching a good guy, not the worst person in the planet, but a wounded person who is using drugs to mask the pain that's in them, not getting the counseling, prayer, or the help that they need. And I believe in all of those components. I mean, you could use the term higher power. I'm not going to debate all of that right now. This is not the platform for that. But having faith and belief in God or a higher power to help you, I agree with that. But at the same time, being able to feel that it's not a stigma to go get the help that you need, because both of us know, Jason, one of the manifestations of drug addiction is risk taking. That person will go out and take risks, Omar, with their livelihood, their family, their marriage, their job. I mean, this thing here can it can spiral real deeply. I have literally watched in the years of counseling, and then even in my own life when I was a drug addict, money that was lost. Oh my God, how much was lost during the time of that addiction? Time, finances, and family. It goes for that, man. And that is the price. And there are people listening at us that I want to say to you, you may be a person that was an addict and you lost everything. Listen, my brother, it's not the end of you. Some people you won't be able to go back to and say, I'm sorry, and I was on the drug. They may not hear your voice there, but I want to encourage you to push forward, to get the help you need, and to do you. To just do you. You might not be able to please everybody, but do that which will build you so you can get back into the game of life and face the beast. Because any type of addiction doesn't just go away, it's addressed how to deal with it. That's what the good counseling and all that we're trying to do does. It helps you deal with the beast, not deny it, because it is there.
Right. Earlier, Jason mentioned NBA players. Delonte West, a former NBA player, who played with the Cleveland Cavaliers, Dallas Mavericks, and one or two other teams, played with LeBron James. Well, there was a major video tape of him getting assaulted by a man on the highway. He was arrested, and he wasn't in his right frame of mind. He went from being a millionaire basketball player to, unfortunately, someone was homeless that was struggling with mental health and substance abuse addiction. And we look at that, Jason, that just goes to show you, man, that one of the things that I learned early in being in the field is that mental illness can affect anybody, because you got those who were professionals, those who were musicians, those who were high positions and athletes who were quote unquote, we say is normal. And unfortunately, one thing happened and led them to suffer from substance abuse or mental health. So this thing is universal. I mean, it could affect anybody.
Mental health doesn't leave anybody alone. If you have a mind, you need to worry about your mental health. If you have a body, hopefully everybody watching this has a body. You got to worry about your body, your physical health,
It's
right?
coming. Yep.
Everybody, and I think we see this time and again, but again, some of that kind of falls back on our ideas of what things must be like. See, we're striving for this. What is it? Happiness is a state of mind, not a destination.
Come on, Jason.
So when we imagine these individuals who are famous, we think, wow, all these people love them. Everywhere they go, people know them. They have all the money. Look at that car. Look at that house. Look at these things that are happening. If I had that, I would be happy. Well, you would be. You would have, but you would also have different things that you're concerned about, right? So they're not having. So they maybe don't have a lack of resources, but we also don't know the other things that those individuals might be experiencing. We've seen this sometimes. I think when this kind of really comes to the public consciousness is when we lose some of those individuals if they have taken their own life, and we say, wow, how did this happen? And I think that no matter what your profession is, you can be in any kind of profession, a man or a woman. You can be old, you can be young. You can be a professional who is in the helping profession and still need help yourself. So nobody is immune to needing to look at their mental health, to be mindful of it. But in the same fashion that I say that, I also want people to keep this in mind. You can take all of your vitamins, you can exercise, eat the right vegetables, do some yoga, get some fresh air. You can do all the right things and you may still get sick.
Yes.
And the same thing can happen with your mental health. Um, we talk a lot about self-care, and one of the things that I make sure that I try to alert people to is, in thinking about self-care, just be careful that you also don't carry some of that stigma and those attitudes over that, well, I'm doing well, I'm doing all these things, and I've encountered any mental health problems, so it must be that those people who are just haven't done enough of the right things. They don't think positively enough. They haven't done something that I've done. And here's the thing, we all think we know what we're going to do and how we're going to react to things until they happen.
Jason, you're spot on.
So you have to we
Wow.
have to always just try to be vigilant and aware of it, that we say, well, oh, I don't have mental health problems. I say I'm not currently. I don't currently, because I don't know what the future holds. I don't know what is around the corner, and I hope I know how I'll react, but I don't. And I hope I know how my body will react, because also on that physical component, as we age, and having you can have different kinds of hormonal shifts that happen in the body, different chemical imbalances that happen in the body. A health condition can be the catalyst for a mental health concern. So there are all these things, and I'm not trying to scare people or to make you feel like everything that happens is going to result in that. But it's better to have the cautionary attitude that those people are me too. That it isn't just something that happens to other people. And sometimes, even when we're talking about that in a racial fashion, I've heard people say certain things, oh, that's not a black problem, or that's not a maybe not talking to people like professionally, but you hear my friends or people that outside of the professional realm just say, oh no, that's not black folks stuff. And I'm like, it is. It is just whether or not we're dealing with it, and whether or not we're dealing with it in private versus just being out there and authentic about what's going on.
Absolutely. And you know what, guys, Jason, when I was listening at you, I was sitting in a chair, kind of thinking to myself, I've got to tag in on the back of what he's saying. A mental health issue is not because you weren't positively thinking, or that you did not have the right frame of mind. Mental health issues many times has to do with a number of factors that you're absolutely out of control of doing anything. You didn't do anything. You didn't wake up and become. Give you a good example. I have a grandson that was in the military. His friend blowed up in front of him, and that left him with heavy emotional problems because of it. Now I can go tell him all I want to. Cheer up, grandson. Put on a happy face. That's not what he's dealing with. He's processing the traumatic shock that he experienced when that happened. And so therefore he has flashbacks, things in his dreams and all of that. Now I can't tell him, hey man, I'm very hard to do good like a medicine. So just cheer up, brother. It's not like that.
What you're mentioning though, and I don't mean to cut you off, but
go ahead.
Some of what you're talking about, actually, my intern who's working with us
awesome. Come on.
Now at the Mental Health Association, Caroline, she just had forwarded me something. It was a relatively recent article about something called toxic positivity.
Come on.
And so what you're talking about is really that, which is that that there is a danger in us saying everything's going to be, well, everything can be all right or better, but it doesn't just happen magically. And when we kind of, sometimes when we try to get people to just only focus on the positive, then we're also telling them ignore, put off, delay dealing with what is real that might not be positive.
Right.
But those things don't just magically disappear. So it's this kind of, it's a new term, I guess, which
I
is
kind of like it.
toxic positivity, where you're just being so positive that you're not really. And you know what I compared to, when she told me this, I said I saw one of those little memes where it's like a little dog and he's in a bar and the bar's on fire. It's like everything's on fire, and he has a huge smile on his face, and the little bubble over top of his head says, "Everything's fine." And you don't want to be that little guy where things are burning down your life, your world, your relationships, your family. When those things are happening, sometimes what we need to do is be able to also just step back and say, "Hey, we can fix this, but we've got to do some work, and some
Right.
different things need to happen."
I have a saying, Jason, healing by dealing. You get healed by what you deal with. Also, I like that about this toxic that you did, which way you described it, because to me, listening at that definition of what you just said, it puts on the person an added burden. Now I have the burden of fighting through all that I'm going through emotionally, all that I'm going through. And then I've got to now fit this cast that you have created of expectation. So now I'm being hit double. I'm being hit by the actual issue that I'm fighting with, trying to find my bearings, trying to find my healing. And also, you're looking at me, and I've got to act a certain way, react a certain way without allowing me to process it. One time when I was sick, Jason, and a lot of my staff, they didn't mean it. They didn't mean this, but they were like, Apostle got to get ready. I mean, we all believing that God's going to, and I turned around and asked them. I mean, they were really wanting me to get well bad, so bad, until I had to ask them a question. I said this, Jason, listen at these words. Excuse me, y'all. May I have y'all's permission to be sick? Now that was kind of madness, wasn't it? I asked for them, and when I said, may I have your permission to be sick, I was saying, will y'all let me process this and don't put expectations on me? I don't have to act chipper when I don't feel chipper. I had cancer. I went through a depression with that cancer. They cut me open like a fish, man. And I went through strange changes, and I had to back folks off and say, look, I need time to process all of this. So don't expect anything from me other than I'm trying to get well. And if you want to do me a favor, let me go through the process. Don't put other expectations on me.
Apostle,
When people are talking to individuals, one thing I think that reminds me of is, that I always try to believe that people really are coming from a good place. And one reflection that sometimes people don't actually take time to think about is that it is very hard to be a good helper. It can hurt to help other people who are hurting. When we're helping people, or we're trying to be there, we're trying to kind of sit with somebody who's in pain. It's not easy.
No.
And what happens is we start squirming, and we want to fix it, and we need that, and we want that person to feel better, not just for them, but because when they start to feel better, then we don't then start to kind of have that empathetic hurt that happens. And it's a real thing. We hurt, but it takes some strength. Sometimes I have to, if you're with someone who is hurting, just understand that the pain of listening is not the same as the pain of experiencing.
Wow.
So whatever you're feeling, take a deep breath, because if it suddenly becomes about you and what you're feeling now, then you're no longer helping.
Yes.
You're no longer there to really truly support what that person is going through, because now you're just trying to eliminate your own pain. That's an
Yes.
easy pain to eliminate. You know how you do it? You stop listening. You stop asking people how they're doing. You stop being concerned about changes that you see. But if you've taken the step to actually really engage somebody, I truly believe it's because you care.
Yes.
But it's not just about caring. Then you got to try to take those correct steps and do the right kinds of things that are going to allow. Sometimes we got to allow people to feel what they're feeling so they can feel something different. You have to let somebody go through some of that pain so that they can actually make progress, and that it's actually meaningful for that person.
Yeah.
So I think you're 100% right that we do have to be careful about trying to add, because really what happens is people that are experiencing these things, they're already wearing a mask. They're already wearing a mask every day, hiding and concealing the intensity of what they're feeling. When they start to take that off with you and share what's real, and then we start to try to overload them with that toxic positivity, it's like we're taking and we're putting that mask right back on their face again.
Yep.
And so you have to kind of look at this from not just our perspective, but you have to look at it from the standpoint of the person that you're there to support.
And in a positive way, I'd like to say to everyone too that is dealing with any type of addiction, recovery, or mental health issues where you're needing help, follow through. Follow through. That's one that I cannot encourage you enough to follow through the process. Follow through the process. I talk to people sometimes, Omar and Brother Jason. I say to them, don't cold turkey your medication. You can't have been on medications that are working to try to help you get balanced out. And all of a sudden you get an epiphany and you drop cold turkey. Whang! Then the next thing you know, the help that you're trying to get between the counseling and the faith and the medication, there comes a clash and what have you by you not following through. So I say this encouragingly, be it medication that you're on, working through the process, don't drop everything cold turkey. Follow through the process. If it's counseling, continue to follow through the process. Most people get to a point and they do not follow through the process, and then they have to go back, act out, go start acting out again, getting into deeper problems that would have them to go and do the process all over again. So follow through the process.
I love that.
You
I love
know,
that follow through message, because it really rings true in any kind of recovery program, that what you'll hear from individuals is, when I stopped doing the things that got me here, I realized I wasn't here anymore. I was someplace else. And I've also heard the opposite, where I've heard people make comments to one another. Why are you in this support group? You don't seem like, why are you doing this? And they're like, that's why I'm doing it, because I don't want you to think that I need it, right? So the things that have gotten me to where I'm feeling some success and I'm feeling some changes, I want to keep doing those kinds of things. Maybe not the same things, because when you think of it as a destination, when I'm climbing a mountain, I need certain tools. When I'm at the top of the mountain, I might need something else.
Yep.
I can't eat the shoes that I was using to climb with. I need to have a tent now, and I need to have other provisions. So and when you think of what you're doing, the process of change, when you consider that and you think of that as a journey, then you have to realize that in different steps of that journey, you may need different kinds of things, but you will need something. So plan, follow through. I love that message.
John, let me ask this question, because whenever you have a therapist or a counselor, there has to be having an effective therapeutic relationship. That trust has to be established. So African American man, he comes in to a facility, says he wants counseling, he wants therapy. And let's say he comes with the mindset saying, that person's a different race from me, they're not going to understand me. Or she's a woman, I'm a man, she can't understand me. So through your both experiences as professionals, have you observed or has any African American man told you that it would be more beneficial for him to meet with an African American male therapist or counselor so they can have someone that understands them, so someone who may come from the hood, someone who's Black, so someone who knows his experiences? Possible?
Well,
Oh, okay, go
Well,
ahead, Jason.
okay,
Okay,
yeah, I
all
was
right,
trying to give Jason a chance
I'll,
first.
I'll go first this time. We're
Okay.
being so polite to each other.
Okay.
So yeah, I think that there's got to be there's a balance of that, right?
Mhm.
So certainly there are going to be certain requirements. People that you might, somebody might just feel more comfortable speaking to a woman. Somebody might just feel more comfortable speaking to a male.
Mhm.
Whether or not those factors are going to ultimately allow that person to have any better insight into you is probably going to be more individual than just across the board, right? I mean, I know that we have different lists though. I mean, for example, I have one that I just shared with somebody today that was all African American therapists, so in case they felt, because that seemed to be what they were looking for. So we said, here is a list of all African American therapists.
Right.
I think that I think that, again, when you're asking people to be vulnerable and they're asking you for certain kinds of requirements, they're trying to kind of, well, let me get this as comfortable as I can get it. There's
Mhm.
nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. I think that people, you have to be open to the process, but you also have to be able to advocate for yourself and realize if you don't have that connection, or if you're finding that there are things that you're getting to that you really need to deal with, and that person really cannot relate or address some of those things with you, then hopefully you both as adults would have the wherewithal to realize whether or not that relationship continues, or do you take the next part of that journey with another individual.
So basically, now what Jason just said, we would actually be saying the same exact thing. With any good counselor, what we want to see for a person that's coming for any type of help or counseling is that we get them at least in the seat where they will be able to express what they're dealing with. And if it takes that, then well and good. Um, I was really shocked about a few months ago, and I think it was due to COVID and overload. I had gotten a call in my office that counseling division in New York was recommending some Black clients that they had because they wanted to talk to an African American male. And their workload at that particular time was so heavy. And we did, in our office, we did take on a couple of their clients and what have you. But I would not, the last thing I would debate them with was how come it had to be African, that's not where you start. In the place of healing, their healing becomes more important than what we're trying to ethnically figure out why and how come, and did you diss this person because they weren't this or that. We're trying to get you in the seat to get some help for you. So if that's what it takes, then amen, let's go, let's work in and see what we can do. And sometimes, Omar, guys, when I talk to some people, I actually end up I know my lane as well. And we refer people to people that we know after counseling with them that they would fit and be comfortable with. That's just the nature of the beast called help. We are not going to debate you for wanting to come. If someone said to me, well, I just don't think I want to talk to a male, I would prefer for it to be a female. I don't get all personal feeling like, did she reject me? Give me a break, please, counselor. That's not about you.
Yeah,
It's about them. Go ahead, Jason.
you gotta let people, yeah. And the reality is that there are things that all of us may understand better or much less than other people, and
Absolutely.
it has nothing to do with whether or not you want to understand that. Depending upon the issue, if I was counseling a young lady and there were certain things that she was concerned about or that were affecting her, I mean, as a male, no matter how open minded, I can listen, but I can't specifically relate. And so we have to know what we are good at. We have to know what we know. And I think sometimes you have to be smart enough to know that there's a lot of things you don't know, and just be willing to admit those things,
Yeah.
and also be willing to look for who might know that
Yeah.
and who might be a better guide
And the client
along
has to
that
be
journey.
comfortable in order to get help. I mean, that's just the bottom line. The client has to be comfortable in order to open up, because the hardest thing to open up, other than a clam on a rough day, is the emotions of a person who's not willing to trust that they can trust talking to you.
Mhm.
That counselor, I don't care how many degrees you got,
Yeah.
you're no better than your ability to make the client feel that you can speak to their issue with empathy, compassion, and a ear that wants to say, I'm not fixing you, I'm hearing you.
And just to kind of go off of that point, that's a really great way of saying that, is that, there are certain things that we gain through professional training, but there are probably also a good number of people that might be watching this now, and you've had people in your life come to you with questions and thoughts and concerns, and so there's something about you that has allowed that to happen, right? There are some things when it comes to people opening up and talking to people that you can't teach somebody in a book or in, I don't care how many observation hours. You just can't give that. And so there's going to be people that will gravitate to you, and there will be people that don't. And so you just kind of, sometimes you really, that whole process of learning about these things sometimes is about learning about yourself and how other people might view you and how other people might react to you, and take what you're doing.
Apostle, you mentioned on several occasions this evening that you were recovering addict from substance abuse.
Mhm.
At what point in your life did you say, "This, I got to make a change," and how did you stop?
The
Who helped
point,
you?
the point that I ended up finding out I needed to make a change, when I found out that nothing I was doing was changing. I actually hit rock bottom.
Mhm.
I had nowhere else to go but either kill myself with the drugs or get some help, because I couldn't help myself. And yes, my faith in God, I have, yes, indeed, that was my that was a big component. But I'm gonna tell you what my faith in God helped me to see: truth. I am an addict. I am dealing with addiction. I can't stop, and I'm losing everything, and I've lost myself. And that was what it took. And I'll tell you something right now, nephew. I have been drug free for a number of years, but I still know that I'm capable of using drugs if I'm not emotionally aware of what I'm going through, to deal with the triggers that drove me towards the drugs. I'm capable of becoming back into the same pattern. See, the awareness at the end of the day, the process leads you to a truth. And that truth is that you are dealing with the addiction, and it is there in your emotions. And if you go back to using it as a comfort, as a strength, you will take you right back in. So I like AA and different ones of them saying, they talk about there's kind of how can I say this? There's a spiritual argument between God setting me free and me still dealing as an addict, as a Christian. Well, let me help you. God has set you free, but you are a Christian that has addictive behaviors that can revisit to you if you fall back into the same patterns. So the likelihood of it trying to pull you back in can happen. So nephew, although I'm a counselor now, and I mean the last thing in the world I would even think of is going that way, my coping, learning how I cope with the pain and the issues that drove me to the drugs, by the strength of my faith in God and by good, wise counseling, That's how it helped me. That's why I was glad when I said, Jason, to go into other areas where counselors and group therapy and coming together with that help. I actually took the courses for addicts, AA. I took the courses for alcohol and drug abuse in order as a person sitting in the class. And I didn't go in there to teach them. I went in there to learn me.
Right, right. Apostle mentioned suicide. Jason, I know with your organization, Mental Health Association Delaware, they have suicide trainings,
Yeah.
educational seminars, and so on. This made me wonder, how prevalent is suicide among African American men? Is it high? Is it middle? Is it low? Because I really don't hear too much about it, to be honest.
Well, I think all suicides are a lot higher than what I think most people are aware of. In fact, I think just across the board, to give you some sense of it, that consistently the suicide rate is greater than the homicide rate. So I had no idea about that sort of thing before. I thought, well, that has to be wrong, and it would have to be different depending on where. No, the suicide rate is higher and consistently has been higher than the homicide rate. And so the thing is, I think when you start to look at other when you look at different populations of people, again, sometimes what you can see is that those difficulties can be magnified because of lack of resources, lack of education around those things. Again, sometimes people having these cultural attitudes that this is not something that we think about or talk about or deal with. But we do a lot of the suicide intervention and awareness programs because it's really important. I think once you realize how prevalent it is just in general, I think that it's very, very easy to understand why everybody should have some basic foundation of understanding this, because the same sort of problems that we're talking about, they sometimes can get to the point where they're too much, where they feel where people now feel like that is their only option to solve the pain and the hurt that we've spent all this time talking about. And that's really what it is. It's something. It's an event that affects individuals. It affects families. It affects the community. There's even some different people that have been on YouTube. If you get on YouTube, there's a guy. He's not a black male. He's a white male. His name is Kevin Hines, and he talks about his experience surviving jumping off the Golden Gate Bridge. He's one of the very few number of people that survived that experience. Talks about what was going on in his life, the build up to this event, what happened, and also what happened in his mind the minute he let go of the guardrails, and what was happening, and what happened afterwards. He travels around now. He's a speaker. He speaks to people about this and the need for really looking at mental health and addressing mental health and mental wellness for people, because his mental health got to the point where it just spiraled out, where where ending his life became a thought that this is the only way I can stop myself from feeling the pain that I'm experiencing all day, every day for all of this time. So I think suicide is something that people don't talk enough about and don't feel comfortable. I mean, even just the word sometimes just send. I can go into a room and sometimes say that word, and I see people's faces. They have like a visceral reaction to even the word sometimes. So the idea of just getting to the point where it's more common
Right.
and normalize to talk about it, and to talk about the fact that people have these thoughts, people have these emotions, and having a chance to engage with people is the biggest step to actually preventing those things from happening. Is that you kind of open the door and provide a little bit of an opportunity for that change to happen.
And Omar, I will share this to piggyback on what Jason was just saying. Um, Often in my counseling, I come across the stigma of the family members after one has committed suicide. I mean, it doesn't just die there with them. It continues on in the family, and the rate of denial, not coming to grips with it. I mean, the betrayal, feeling that they were betrayed, abandoned. I mean, it gets real deep, and the processing, even the aftermath of a suicide, is tremendous. So you have a dual double-edged sword: the
Yeah.
loss of a human being's life, which is pertinent, which really matters. And then the family trying to process that loss. Tremendous. The issues come there. Things happen in the family. Some of them spiral into denial that it never really happened that way, secrecy, trying to make sure it doesn't get out. Or if it does get out, the stigma that something was wrong with them. And now, even some people have the fear that they themselves, being the family member, has the propensity to commit suicide themselves.
Statistically,
Say it,
when
brother.
people experience a trauma like that, um, you know, it can increase the likelihood that other people may then start to have those kinds of thoughts, because the act of losing someone in general, and then also to lose somebody in that specific manner, is extremely traumatic.
Mhm.
Any kind of trauma can be a catalyst or something that could kind of add to other factors, and then start that process of thought with someone. So it doesn't mean that it's a given, that all of a sudden, because this happened, now
Mhm.
I'm going to do this too. But it raises it raises kind of the vulnerability of people, when they've experienced something that is so deeply traumatic.
Mhm. Uncle, you have a history of working with counseling in the prisons. So this is what I hear sometimes about the complaints in prisons. I heard this story quite a bit. Man, he was okay before he got in prison. When he got out of prison, he started having some mental problems. Or while he was in prison, he didn't get his medications, he didn't get his therapy, and so on, so on. So your experience as a counselor working in the prison systems, did you encounter any of those particular type of situations?
Yes, I've even had a family member of ours that was in prison with emotional and mental problems, and getting the medication that they need, getting the evaluation that they needed. The process was sort of slow and kind of gridlocked. I mean, I, it was amazing what they had to go through, and which some of the acting out that they were doing in the system was actually based upon the mental issues that they were going through. So that happens sometimes in situations like that. And um, I know right well our society right now has got a problem that they're working with, that there are many people that are on the streets that are being arrested, or people that have mental problems. Omar, about last summer, I had the sad occasion to be on Skid Row in California. And I was on Skid Row, Jason, in California in the middle of the night, almost midnight. Okay. And what I saw on that street was not just drug addicts or prostitutions. I saw people who had mental issues. They had turned out people that had needed mental health care. To my understanding, and I don't want you to quote me, but the understanding that I was getting, that California went through a type of change in their mental health process, where they released a number of clients out of certain institutional mental health care places. And some of those people ended up on Skid Row. I actually talked to a judge when pleading a case in California court in Los Angeles. I told the judge, I said, Your Honor, I stood on your skid row and I saw where California, with its best attempt, had failed these people that were out there on them streets, because some of them were people with mental health issues. Jason, I worked 9 years in a mental institution. I saw that from severe, mild to moderate, strong emotional problems and situations. Jason, on the ward that I worked for 11 years, I saw it on that street in Skid Row in California.
I certainly believe that, and and there's part of one of the divisions of the Mental Health Association. We have a fantastic peer team, and we have a group of within that division that works with the mental health court in Wilmington, and they do just amazing work to try to that is a lot more focused on the restorative aspect of what's going on with people, because there are a lot of cases where people are having undealt with, undiagnosed mental health concerns, and it precipitates them having some encounter with the law or having broken or violated some law. And so a lot of their work in mental health court is designed to really focus on the restorative aspect of what's happening with these folks, to as opposed to having them go be in prison or be imprisoned for these violations, to actually address what's going on with their mental health, to take the right kinds of counseling steps, to take the kinds of community restoration steps that they need to. And that's the kind of stuff that more of that sort of thing should really be happening, because really what happens is it's very interesting, because we already have these things, but we have them for communities that have more resources. Because when you have a lot of resources, chances are you don't go to prison and then wait for a court date. You make bail, you get a therapist, you get pushed into this program or another program. So the restorative piece is really one of the most important things that I think could happen as related to like mental health and how it intersects with law enforcement.
Because I believe, guys, at the end of the day, when all of the elections and all of the political part is done, which is necessary, I believe that a lot of the attention that is needed in this mental health issue that we're talking about, they're going to have to address it. Because at the end of the day, when November goes by and the election is finished, we that are on ground level are still going to be dealing with the same issue. And we need funding for those that are doing on your level and what have you, like with groups like you're doing. We need this issue addressed more in the communities that does not have the resources for the help that they need. This issue has to be addressed, and it's not going to go away after the election. It's not going to go away when you drop confetti and say, behold, this is who we have in office. It's going to have to be dealt with street level, ground level, community level, incarceration level, arrest record level. It's going to have to be dealt with. It's not going away.
Right. Okay, so gentlemen, we're coming short on time. So what I want to do is give both of you gentlemen an opportunity to just briefly talk about the organizations that you represent, phone number for those who are watching and may need to seek some counseling or some supportive services. I'll start with Jason.
Okay, so if you were to visit our website, it's MHAINNDE.org. There's ways to reach all of our staff members via email. If you were to call our offices, it'll direct you towards our phone. We're not currently in the offices as much now, but all of our voicemails will direct you how to email us, how to best reach us, so that we can help you. We're happy to talk to people about any kinds of concerns or things that they're looking for or trying to find out about in the community. And again, we're also, it's a good way to kind of follow us to see what else we're doing, because we do some different kinds of community workshops and things where we're talking about and answering people's questions related to mental health, in real time. We want people to really think about the role that mental health, plays in all of our life. And it's something that, when you think of the measures that a lot of people take, we learn things like CPR. Hopefully you never have to use it. But if you learn anything about mental health, I can pretty much promise you will find an occasion to use that information, if not once, possibly many times. So having a little understanding, a little foundation about it, and a willingness to notice it and to do something about it, to take a step towards somebody that you might see struggling. Those are the kinds of things that we really want to encourage people to do.
Now, Jason, right quickly, the Mental Health Association, is that a national organization, or is it just in Delaware?
We there's some sense, there's some kind of affiliate organization, there's some branch of Mental Health Association in just about every state.
Okay.
We're a like I said, we're a nonprofit that and we do the work throughout the state. But there's some kind of they might have a slightly different name in a different state, but there's some aspect of that operates.
Yeah, I was just asking because you have those who are probably watching that's not residing in Delaware, so I just wanted to.
True. So yeah, so there typically is some type of organization that does a lot of what we do that would hopefully be able to do that for you in whatever state you're watching from. Sometimes people aren't sure. If they call us or they reach out and get in touch with us, then we figure out who's that person that does that in their state, and then we kind of direct them, because mainly because of a lot of the resources that we kind of update and stay current on are focused on in Delaware. So I maybe couldn't tell you if I could find the number, but I wouldn't have recently figured out whether or not some particular branch of support is available in Pennsylvania or Maryland. So we would try to direct you towards the people that could let you know those things and give you the best sort of resources that are local to you, because that's what's important. You need to have something that's not far from you that you can access. So we don't want people to have to travel to the moon to get what they need.
Absolutely.
Right. Okay, Apostle.
All right. Well, I am overseer and founder of Pilgrim's Ministry of Deliverance, and our ministry actually deals with counseling and that type of thing. But I really recommend in the area of drug and alcohol counseling and stuff is Eternal Hope Ministries with Pastor Tony Neal. Also, Pastor Thurman Hopkins is in the Oak Orchard area. That's God's House of Deliverance and ministry. That is another asset that I would recommend people to go to for prayer, ministry, and direction. I am an author, and I've written books such as Who Counseled the Counselor. I deal with books dealing with damaged emotions and what have you. So on that level and what have you, we do counseling as well. But a lot of the counseling I do, Jason, is counseling people and directing them to where they can get the both natural and spiritual help with the situation they're going through. And I have a great honor for the vehicles like what you're doing, Jason, the local level, the ground level, like Tony Neal, and all of them that they're doing to work with these areas. So, and I cannot say enough to you, Omar, the issues that you're bringing on your show. I give you a great big hand clap on that, man, because it is really great addressing these issues. These type of talks that we have is stuff that in our African American community, they don't sit down and talk about very much, but it's highly necessary. So I want to tell you, we appreciate the work that you're doing, Omar.
Okay, I'm gonna do you have a website?
Yes, my website is pilgrimsministry.org. And if you type the name Ivory Hopkins, I come up everywhere because I've been out in ministry for over 40 years doing global work all over the nations. So I come up very strong. I have a strong following, and you can find us on Ivory Hopkins YouTube and ivoryhopkinsvimeo.com. And so,
Okay, and Jason, I know you mentioned earlier about the groups being virtual. How can people? What days are they? What times are they?
That there's a lot of them, and there are different ones depending on
yeah,
that I think we have a newly started men's group actually, which is probably
Wow.
great to mention in here. There are women's groups. There's also some groups that I know that they've been doing other things that are mental health related. I think they have a karaoke group. That's not for everybody. I'm not in that one now. They don't want me singing, but there's some great singers that go to the karaoke group. But because essentially these groups, again, they're not just to talk about things that are wrong. There are places where people can talk about things that are right. There are places that people can talk about what they're trying. Or there are places where people can just kind of feel free to be authentic, that they don't have to wear that mask that we so often have to. There are places that we can talk about what's real, how it's affecting us, find out what other people are doing that's getting them through the days and getting them through the weeks, because again, so much of this stuff with the social isolation has really magnified
my God, yes.
what people are going through. Interestingly enough, one of the quick features of things along the spectrum of mental health is that, sometimes people say, well, you watch for people that have increased isolation, but now don't we all have increased isolation, right? So you can imagine how this is affecting people who maybe have never dealt with the mental health concern, but also those who have been struggling since before the pandemic, that this is really just kind of magnifying so many different things. So we need these kinds of outlets. We need these places where we can really connect when we have been forced to disconnect.
And see, Omar, that's why I think it is important for shows like you're doing, because right now, what I call this is the COVID cave, and we haven't fully come out of it yet.
Right.
And when the COVID season hit us, when this pandemic hit us, I saw almost a 70% change of counseling coming our direction. We were flooded from all over the place. And every counseling group that I know of, Jason, in different pockets all over the country, have been inundated with people who are now in their homes, in their own head, and they're dealing with stuff that they were able to push past by activity, push past by being busy, working, doing things. And now in the COVID cave, all of these emotions, plus our society is in panic mode. So all of these things play into why people end up going for substance abuse or getting into family problems and family issues. So we need this type of conversation. Guys, it's been a pleasure being with you. I've enjoyed talking with you, Jason.
Enjoyed it greatly. Thank you.
Okay, guys. Thanks a lot. Okay, God bless.
God bless you too.
Take care, everyone.
All right, bye.